Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the city's capital committee. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. If you recall from we last met on I think it was the 22nd of March or thereabouts. We had a preliminary proposed capital budget with the exhibits, and there was some discussion on those, and we had some recommendations about entertaining some changes in those exhibits. And we had some follow-up questions about some of the items on the exhibits. So you should have each received some information on those, and which we can discuss. What I would like to do is pull up the one document that highlights the revised list, which includes a column illustrating what the changes were from the preliminary list. And then we'll go from there. And as we have questions, we can work our way down. If that sounds like a plan, I'd like to pull that up right now and share my screen. Wait a minute. Let's try it again. There we go. All right, can everyone see that? Great. Okay, if you remember, most of the discussion was focused on the $36 million in the prior year surplus amounts, and we had original recommendations, and we talked about it a bit. And one of the items to include, there was sentiment for, was including something related to signal timing detection. So that has been added at an amount of $1 million. You know, what I'll ask, I think I'll ask Rich to go through this list to sort of illustrate what the addition was and where the changes were, and any nuances related to those changes. Rich, you want to?
Yeah. Director Payne, may I just jump in for 1 second?
Oh, sure, yeah.
President Bradley, while you go through that, can you let us know what project will be finished with this amount and which ones are still going to need more funding?
Sure.
I'd just be interested in kind of knowing that while I'm listening. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. There's a number of them were so large where over time, for instance, like the pools and the boilers, we've been sort of taking pieces of them and allocating pieces. For instance, I know with the pools, it was originally 5, and then we gave $1 million in a previous appropriation, and we have $1 million here. So we're sort of knocking it down over time, but that's a good point to make. Okay, Rich?
Yes, sir. Okay, so at the last capital meeting, and I will do my best to explain these, and if I miss something, please ask me. So at the last capital meeting, there was a conversation, interest in signal detection and timing on the capital needs inventory list. That is a $2 million item. So I looked the best that I could to figure out how we could begin that program, as we have a number of others, such as under streets, the underground downtown lighting vaults. This 500,000 is the second shot of 500,000. There's still a remaining 500,000 left. The signal detection, this will be $1 million, and there would still be $1 million project left. And as I highlighted at the last meeting, the traffic signal detection, timing, so forth, is to install vehicle detection at critical intersections on city arterials to allow traffic signals and service upon demand. So, if you will, I mentioned there are traffic cameras that control the actuation of signals, and there are loop detectors that are in pavements. This is the loop detectors in the pavements that need to be replaced, and also would come with some signal timing. So in order to come up with that $1 million, I had to do a couple things. First of all, I had to look at the bottom line number, which Paul gave as $35,883,800. And then I systematically went through and just removed a piece here or a piece there of other items, such as boiler replacements. And so boiler replacements up until now, I believe that one is on the critical needs list at 1,750 million remaining. That was a critical one from before, and we had previously put into it 1.944 million from Board Bill 184, and we had put 1,530 million in from Board Bill 168. So we had remaining about 1,750,000. And of course, where we are now, take 1 million off, we'll still have 750,000 remaining there. The pool renovations is another one very similar to that. We put in $1 million under pool renovations. There's remaining $5 million previous to now. We put in $1 million under Board Bill 184, and then this would remove another $1 million from pool renovations. And so there would be approximately $4 million. And again, just to refresh your memory, there are 7 pools in the city. There are 3 outdoor pools, and those are at Fairgrounds, Chambers, and Marquette. And there are 4 indoor pools, and those are at Cherokee, Wool, Tandy, and 12th and Park. And so again, I removed $200,000 from the pool item to just continue our work on pumping systems, piping, concrete work, whatever the Parks Department identifies those next needs to be after we spend the money that we have in hand. Another thing that was added, as opposed to being subtracted, was a pool fencing item. It was loud and clear from the Capital Committee that is a subset to pool repairs that pool fencing replacement needs to be done. So we thought we would start that program off. We put in 550,000 for that number. That is an estimated cost. I don't know exactly how much the pool fencing will cost, but that will get that program started. And that is for the outdoor pools to remove chain link type fencing that has barbed wire on it and put up some type of a security fencing that is more decorative and attractive to the users and the neighborhood and so forth. Then we move down to HVAC. It's a rec centers. So the capital critical list had $6 million on that. Previous to now, the rec center HVAC repairs. Hang on one second here. Previous to now, it doesn't look like we have allocated any funding for that outside the boilers. And so we would take this $1.3 million away from the $6 million, and that would leave the remaining balance to be on the capital needs list. That I originally had that penciled in at 1.5 million, but removed a couple $100,000 to help make up the delta for signal timing above. The hazardous tree removal was originally on this list for 1.1 million. And Nancy and I and Greg Hayes had a conversation about that. And there is funding that will come from another source. I believe it's budgetary. And so we were able to knock that item down $550,000 in order to go towards the other $1 million. And then on the final page, vehicle replacements, I took out $223,200, and on miscellaneous building repairs, I took out $200,000. Again, those are the vehicle replacement would simply be the priority list that Chris Amos has provided. We would go down the list as far as this committee wants to fund it, and that would be the cutoff as close to what that amount is. And then miscellaneous building repairs, what that is that is basically an item whereby, you know, if a pipe breaks, if a roof leaks, if there's some kind of a unforeseen building condition that comes up, which happens continuously, we use the miscellaneous building repair item. Last year, we had allocated about $700,000 for miscellaneous building repairs. We spent that in about 3 months, the first 3 months of the fiscal year. So I'm asking for a bit more than before. The reason for that is if we can't replace a lot of these items that are critical needs, we need to keep them running. And so many of these items are beyond useful life, beyond, well, I'd say most of them are beyond useful life, beyond failure mode. We're actually manufacturing parts to keep them working. So that item helps me with that and unforeseens that come up to keep 150 or so city buildings operative throughout the course of a year. So I don't know what other items you would like to talk about, so I think I'll stop there and see what questions we have.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Yeah, so the goal here was to incorporate those items that Rich just described and then keep it within the balance, and that's what we've done. I've also sent to you, and Chris is available. This is the prioritized rolling stock list. So if it's depending on what the dollar amount is, and as you said, Rich says that $5.7 million figure, we just go down the list. You see where the $5.7 million hits. It's usually either 34 or 30. There it is. Probably at the first page, the end of the first page, item 34, and that's what we would be funding with those available revenues. There were some other. I'll open it up to the committee. I did circulate some materials regarding some of the outstanding questions we had from last time, but again, what I'd like to do is just sort of talk about what we've got proposed here, and anyone who has questions, we can ask. Anyone? Okay, Alderwoman Spencer.
I always have questions, Paul, but I thought I would give everybody else an opportunity.
All right.
Okay, so the hazardous tree removal, well, first of all, this is a little bit different than the proposed changes that were circulated earlier. I noticed a few changes in that. Rich, I guess that was at a previous iteration.
This is the same list I circulated with the agenda last week.
Yes, that's
These
correct.
changes.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. I was looking line by line and it looked, yeah, I confused the lines. Okay, you're right. My apologies on that. Okay, so the tree removal, you mentioned that was coming from another source budgetary. What is that source, Rich? I just want to make sure. We have so many dead trees. Is it within the budget? I know that the forestry department was the recipient of a pretty significant grant over the next 3 years. Wondered if that was playing into it. I just want to be assured that we're not going to be cutting anything that we need on the tree removal side.
So can I refer to Nancy on that, since Nancy's right in the middle of putting the budget together?
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
So, in response, Alderman Spencer, yes, there is an $8 million grant that the forestry department has gotten to have hazardous tree removal, which is why we thought we could try to meet some of the other issues that other concerns people had on the committee had raised, and lower that, but not take the line item out, because we hope that 8 million will cover everything. But if it doesn't, there will be a line item for another 550,000, but then that usually means if it's a line item here, it continually gets funded till it's gone. There's also a sum of money going in through ARPA to remove specific types of the ash trees, which people get upset about, but apparently we have to take a lot of them down. And so there's money coming from that as well in Board Bill 143 committee substitute. So we felt comfortable that if we were getting 8 million, which we hope to go through the board in the next, at the beginning of the next session, have that approved by E&A and the board, that would be able to get us start moving on that. And we've already had some conversations based on the ARPA money with our current contractor that does tree removal to make sure that they had the capacity to add in additional staffs if needed to help us spend this money. and get rid of some of these trees.
And I'll add to that, I will add to that, this is separate from that. We also have $500,000, which we put in the regular capital budget each year for eliminating the ash tree. So that's in addition to these funds.
Okay, the grant for forestry, I thought it was 3 million. Was it 8 million?
It's 8 million.
Okay, over 3 years, is that right?
I believe that's correct.
And it's for tree removal, is that right, Nancy?
Correct.
Other things, okay.
So just for everyone's understanding, the money in the ARPA Board Bill 143 committee substitute is for tree removal on private property, which is problematic for the city and neighbors. And then this 8 million is used for the other types of tree removals that have to be done that are actually on city property. So if everything goes well, there'll be a lot of tree removal in the next couple of years in order to spend down these funds and clean up a lot of the past people putting in things for a long time, and hopefully get the streets and neighborhoods in better condition, on not worrying like yesterday with the tornado warnings and things, that this could be potentially hazardous to us all. So.
Okay, so I think Alderwoman Schweitzer had an excellent question with regards to which of these projects are gonna be completed. It sounds like the boiler rooms, like none of these projects are actually gonna get completed with these funds. Is that right? At least on the park side. And
Yeah, I mean, if you
I
look
mean,
at
obviously
the,
the streets isn't gonna be completed, but sorry, Paul, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to jump in. Each year when the capital needs inventory is updated, you'll see that there was a number was requested. There was an appropriation. Let's say the pools. I think the pools even started out higher at one point. I think it was like 7 million, and now it was down to 5. And it will go down each year. But yeah, we seem to be, some of these items are so big that we're addressing whatever we can on a proportionally, particularly if it can be phased, so that we can at least address a portion of it. And so we should see that in the next year's inventory.
Okay, but on that same point, it's not gonna be money allocated that's gonna sit there. We're gonna fix some of the boilers, some of the pools, and it will just be ticking down. With regards to some of these other big projects, like the 600-ton chillers, the 3 chillers, is that completing that project? The ones
Yes.
that we didn't change,
Yeah.
okay. And then,
That's a complete project, yes.
okay, and then, the city hall bathrooms, was that a completed project at 1.4?
That's the remaining phase. That's the
Okay.
remaining 8 restrooms to be completed, yes.
Okay. And then, I think it would be helpful to just identify which ones are that have spend ready, and we're not gonna just sit there, partially funded. With regards to the, I would like to have a little bit more just to go through the telecom system. Maybe that's not the right time to do that. I just had.
Sure. Judy, did you want to discuss that?
I have the staff on board. I mean, I'm not sure what questions she wants, or what's your questions on that, Alderwoman?
Thank you, Judy. I was just, kind of wanting a little bit more information about the system as a whole. It was my understanding when we considered, well, my first question is the 2.7 gonna cover the entire project?
No, there's gonna be a gap of 800,000 for the last fiscal year.
Which would be FY26.
We will come back for another 800,000 to complete that.
So where is the 2.7 million gonna go in the meantime before we appropriate another 800,000?
The 2.7 million is going towards infrastructure. Can you all hear me first of all? My name is Sherry Cross.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. The 2.7 is going towards infrastructure, first of all, because we have a crumbling infrastructure that has not been updated in over 30 years. Very small parts have, but in general, for the amount of buildings that we're looking at, we're talking about 13 buildings. Some of them are large and some of them are small, but, and then of course, the cost of the phone system itself. So the biggest thing that, we put in phone systems all the time. The
Mhm.
thing that we're excited about is that our infrastructure is going to be updated that will take us through the next 30 years.
I had a
Okay.
follow-up question.
Well, I think too, and to answer Alderwoman Spencer's question, she asked about what's that 2.7? There's two buildings that's gonna be done last, and then that's, everything else is should be done through this next fiscal year. And that's the infrastructure upgrade as well as those other buildings. But they're still working on the final, they know where they want to start, but they're still working on the final thing as far as the layout.
Well, I don't mean to be daft, but I kind of went through the PowerPoint and I don't really understand what the project is. Are we replacing like our lines or?
We're,
I
I'm
just
sorry.
don't understand the basic what the project, I mean, what we're doing with it's almost $3 million.
We have a phone system that was put in the 90s in the downtown campus, and it also covers civil courts in Carnahan as
Okay.
well, which has more than city employees in it. So what we're doing is we're replacing a 30-year-old phone system and putting in a new voice over IP system that we will be able to utilize. Now, this same system currently exists in 1520 Market Street. We have about 800 users there. So we already have the system there. We already have it at the water department in Chesterfield and also on Kings Highway. And so we've been using the system, the voice over IP system, for quite a while. But we need to expand it to the downtown campus because the current system that we have is so old that it is no longer able to be maintained by AT&T. And so because it was put in so long ago, the majority of the people, really all of the people who were able to service it are retired. And
Okay.
so, and if we want to add to that system, like the Board of Elections wanted us to upgrade their system, and we could not because of the crumbling infrastructure. And, it's just time. So it's been 30 years and the whole country is updating infrastructure as
Okay.
well. And new phone systems are something that happen quite a bit. So we are already using this technology in a lot of different buildings. So this is what the project is entailing, is the wiring, taking the wiring up to a level that can support the phone system, which is category 6. And then we're going to put in the new HVS phones that we currently, it's an upgrade of the phones that we have at 1520 and at the water department. But we are upgrading and putting in all new phone systems in all those 13 buildings. So that's what the project is.
Okay. I was trying to figure out what HVS is and was unable to really find any information. I guess we've already chosen AT&T as the provider.
Yeah, it's there. It's AT&T's hosted voice system. That is what HVS is. It's a voice over IP system.
Okay. It sounds like Christina has some questions. I'll turn it over. Thanks. I don't know that much about technology, so I was hearing a lot of questions about it, so trying to kind of echo those.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Christina.
Thanks, Alderwoman. So to go back, so this project just received ARPA money. Was it last session or last year, or was it this year? And how much has it been spent down?
Of the original 2.5, I believe there was $1.8 million remaining.
And those,
Uh,
were you asking
Yeah.
how that money was allocated? What was it used for, or what's your question?
So it says, ARPA funds were received, 1.77 million. And my question is, when was that allocated, and how much spending has been, how much is that been all spent, or is there, how much is remaining from that money?
The 1.7 is what's remaining. The
Oh, so it was
original
originally was
2.5,
2.5.
yes. So
So
the
there-
remaining is the 1.7. And now with this, and then the funds that were spent for that were done for the upgrades of the installation really is for the 5-9 call centers, which is in 5 different departments. They have
Okay.
call centers.
And also that money was used to upgrade 15-20 market buildings, switches.
Okay, I'm
And
just
the
thinking about
bandwidth.
timing, because I think this was allocated in 2022. And so $750,000 was spent in a year and a half. So I just wanted to know, like, is that the rate at which we're spending the money, or? What-
No, that's just, where we were. We still had to end up getting the contract done for the completion of this. Okay, so the system had to be designed and that took a while. And
Okay.
then we had to go back for the funding for it. So I think once all of this starts, they're working on now on RJP coming out to do the wiring for these different buildings, but you can only do so many at a time, or one building at a time. But anyway, once that starts, then the money will start to be spent.
We were actually going to begin the whole project in March of 2024, according to the schedule that we had, but we had to wait on the contract to be signed to move forward. So we're working with AT&T. We meet with them weekly. We adjust the schedules according to, any variables that take place or any information that needs to be added. So we're actually now, we're really on track. We're going to begin this month, and there are a lot of meetings that have to be held in order to make sure that all of the people are in place. That is our vendor's responsibility, and RJP is a vendor under them on this project. So we are ready to go. We're starting with the Board of Elections. That's the first building. We held off a little bit because they had an election. Of course, that would happen today. And so now we're ready to go.
Okay, and then with this additional 2.7, you'd be able to spend that and the remaining ARPA funds before this time next year?
Yes, we're actually getting ready to order once we got that signature last week, that it really was the go signal. So all of the equipment is being ordered and shipped. So that money, you're going to start to see that money dwindle down. But you're right, it did sit there for a minute, but we had to get all of our ducks in a row. This is a huge planning process. And there are many, many people committed to making this happen. So, I understand your concern, but we're ready to get going.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I just wanted to clarify, I believe Sherry and Judy are aware of this, that their first thing is to spend the remaining of the ARPA money. And then if there's capital money approved, they would go and spend that secondly. And if they have a contract with AT&T, that should have the ARPA funding encumbered through that so that they will meet the deadlines that we need for the
Yes.
Treasury Department. I think that just needs to be said.
And what are the deadlines?
Judy is aware of the deadlines. The deadline is by December of
Next,
2024. It
yeah,
has to be encumbered.
Okay,
right.
Right.
So we're good.
awesome. Thank you, Nancy.
No problem, but we probably will ask again about where that's at because we are trying to make sure that the money gets spent. Christina's question is very relevant to making sure
Absolutely.
that the ARPA money gets spent before the deadlines are done.
Excellent.
And Judy, I mentioned this to you early, but I did want to get a sense you mentioned savings. So and I know that it's going to be phased in, when should we start seeing operational savings from this system?
I believe in order to see the savings, it's going to gradually move in terms of when the different buildings are completed. and then they start to get their new phone bills, or we start to get them because the bill comes in to here and we send it out to the different departments. So everybody's going to start seeing that it's going to start decreasing as these phones get up and operational. So in terms of an actual timeline, see, I think that with the Board of Election just being that one building, and they chose to do that one first because it's smaller, just to make sure there's no kinks or anything. I think you'll see that cost drop first.
And then
And
the
then,
next, right. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Sherry.
I was just gonna say the next building is City Hall. And because we have so many users in that building, we will really start to see a substantial drop in the Plexar bill.
And the reason why I was asking, obviously, is if there's still a portion that needs to be funded after this is completed, for next year, I was looking towards a source of funding for that, and was wondering if we can realize sufficient savings to get there. Christina, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, that's a very smart suggestion, Paul, to maybe like mentally set aside the savings
Right.
to finish this project off. The other question I had is this session or this next session, the Board of Aldermen will be revisiting our ordinances on cell phones. And so I was wondering how this will interplay. A lot of departments are, like our department has work cell phones instead of landlines. And so I was wondering if that's going to be part of the assessment at all, cell phone usage and cell phones being assigned to workers in lieu of desk phones, and how that, is that being built into the project at all?
What happens is we do something that's called a station review. And we visit with each department head and our departmental contact. And we ask them a series of questions and determine what it is that they need for their operation. Telecommunications is a little bit different from some of the other trade associations within the city of St. Louis. We have to get very involved in the integral function of the departments. So we can't just sit a phone on a desk. We actually have to understand the way that the calls come in and the desire by that management of how they want those calls routed. And so that's why we sit down with each one of them and specifically ask them for their needs. And it's also an education opportunity for us because we are going to a new phone system. So we'll do the song and dance and explain to them all of the different features and things that they have not had an opportunity to experience. So we will really be stepping things up a lot for them since we're coming off of a 30-year system. This is a very robust system. There are a lot of bells and whistles, and we will educate them during that time. And then they begin to design how they want their phone system to work for them. And we take that and we build it according to each department.
Okay, so we'll kind
The
of.
cell phones, I'm sorry, I didn't address the cell phones.
Go ahead, yeah.
Cell phones are handled by the supply department. They have never been handled by telecommunications since the 90s. But right now we have features where a phone call could be at your desk and you need to leave. You're able to switch that call from your desk set to your cell phone and vice versa. So those features have been in existence since 2009. For the 1520 Market Building and for the Water Department.
So Christina, are you saying that they will not have desk phones, that they're just going to use cell phones?
So I can't speak for all the departments, of course. I just know that since the system's been like underfunded for so long, like we've at least definitely members, the executive secretaries and the Board of Aldermen still use the landlines, but our office doesn't use them for the most part. And so one question, I think as part of when you guys are going to each department and doing that kind of assessment or that consulting, we're planning on making it more clear and easier for departments to, there's some ordinances on the books that make technically getting a work phone or a work cell phone something that has to be approved by the Board of Aldermen, which we don't want to be involved in. So it's just going to be, it should be part of that conversation that like there might not be as much landline usage if it makes more sense for departments to be issuing cell phones. So, and I just don't know if that, so it sounds like that's going to be part of the assessment.
It's already, yeah, you're right. That is already a part of how we do business with the city of St. Louis. So we already, there are, anytime a department is wanting to just only utilize their cell phones, you'll find that that's not as, by law, there's an issue with cell phones die. A great safety backup is a desk set. You never have to worry about anybody dialing 911 and not being able to get through because of their battery. But we don't handle cell phones in our department, but we will discuss how that department works and what they want. We never dictate to people how they want or how they should operate in their business. We always listen and support and also educate. And so that's going to continue to be the standard. And if there is a department that decides, or a section, it's usually a small section that may decide that they want to only utilize cell phones. But you'll also find if you go and visit them, that desk phone is used a lot.
And do you think, I mean, you'll be doing a lot of the assessments this year once you hit City Hall. So there's a possibility that there's there's less demand than anticipated, will that impact the cost? Like, will the cost go down or is it it's a set cost based because of what it's for?
Christina, what you're gonna find, and this is what happens because we've been doing this for 30 years, the people that we speak with, the department heads and such, they pretty much take phone systems right out of the box. There's not a lot of, even though the phone systems we put in are very robust, City of St. Louis employees tend to just use very basic things like, can I forward my phone to my cell phone? Can I lift my handset and make a phone call? And so when it comes to cost, the only cost that we are concerned about are the phones that sit on desk. If a department decides that they don't want a phone set, that's up to their discretion. It's rare, and we don't like to color our phone systems with rare situations or anomalies. We really speak in general about how the phones go. So that's not anything that honestly has been a big issue. And we speak with our department contacts and department heads quite often. That has not come up. The only people that seem to bring up some of these issues, it seems, are people that are not in those decision-making capacities.
And, of course, if you have a section that's deciding to use cell phones instead of desktop phones, of course, your monthly bill is going to be down because those are phones that's not going to be used. But what we want to do in cases like this is we want to wire the infrastructure as if we're going to put phones there, because today you may have a group of folks that's not using the desktop phones. They want to go for cell phones, but a couple of years down the line, you may find that you need a desk phone at that desk. So we want to make sure the infrastructure is there so you can have it if you need it or not. And of course, the less number of phones we use, your monthly bill will be cheaper, of course.
And the other reason why desk phones are extremely important is because we have some E911 issues right now. So that means that anytime a person picks up the phone, any phone system that we put in now, we're looking at 2 laws that we have to cover. And one is to make sure that when they lift their handset, that 911 knows where that person is. And the other issue is that, you know, they can just dial easily without even getting, oops, sorry. They're able to dial 911 without any encumbrances. And you can only really guarantee that with a desk phone, not a cell phone.
So of course, when we do our station reviews, we'll talk to these departments that want to use cell phones instead of desktop phones. We'll find that information out once we go, once we start our station reviews.
And what you're gonna find is a hybrid. You're gonna see that they're gonna use both of them because that's, we've had departments that have removed their phones and we've put them back too.
Okay, so, but you're expecting marginal changes to
do.
the expected budget because
And-
you still
and
need to
like-
install the wiring and
Mhm.
in anticipation that needs may change. All right,
And we
I'll-
can always, we're flexible, you know, we can always meet their needs. So nothing is static. This is a very dynamic business. It's constantly changing. So, you know, if we get a request from a manager or our departmental contact about any change, we meet them and make sure that it happens for them.
I'll kick it over. Nancy, you had your hand up. I didn't know if you were gonna. ask.
I'll do this is really, as far as the departments come, this is going to be an operational decision as to department by department, whether we have cell phones or landlines, because the cell phones are not inexpensive and we're going to have to figure that all out. I appreciate that the Board of Alder people do not want to be in charge of those policies, but we have started to look at that. Phones do get ordered by the supply division, but in reality, anyone that's not in the field has not been, to the best of my knowledge, issued a cell phone instead of the landline. But a lot of the staff are in the field and more staff are in the field than may have been a few years ago. So we are trying to figure out what's the in-between on that. The cost may go down on landlines, but then the cell phone costs will go up. So I'm not seeing a big savings initially if we create all of the landlines and then we go to cell phones, we still have to pay. If we're still paying for both, that's potentially problematic.
I appreciate that, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on the telecom? Alderwoman Schweitzer, did you have your hand raised?
Not on telecom.
Okay, no, you just go ahead.
Okay, so for the signal optimization project, mentioned that it was about half of the funding, maybe a little bit less. Apologize if I got that wrong, but what would it be that none of the work can happen on that until it's all funded, or is that another like so X amount can get done?
Right, so all the ones that are partially funded, and that's a really good question. The reason we partially fund them is the work can start immediately and we can start doing work on them, getting a design in place or getting a few locations actually constructed. And that goes with all these partially funded ones. I would not put them on the list as partially funded if we had to wait until remaining funding came. Once we get the funding, we will immediately start with a phased approach to get that work done.
Okay, I guess some of the things I'd seen in the past with partially funding is if the price goes up over time. So I guess with the telecom system, it looks like they weren't able to lock in, I guess this is a telecom question, they weren't able to lock in a 2021 contract because we didn't have all the money in place, or is that a concern with any of these specific projects, or is it just evolving?
I would say this, that's always a concern. The economy drives the cost, and right now, if you're not aware of this, construction costs are up somewhere around 40%. So it's always a concern, but I think what we do is we just keep pecking away at it, and then we reassess what the end result is. So when we get to the final number, then we have to say, does that final amount get us to a finish? Do we need to add a little more? Is it a little extra? That's why it's awfully hard when we say estimated costs, particularly when they're phased like that. Costs do change, cost of labor changes, so it's a concern. But at the end of the day, I think if we don't do a phased approach on some of these, and I think most people would agree with me on this, that we're never gonna get started. A lot of times they never will start. So once we start them, then we feel incumbent to keep funding them until they're done. And that's the
And
way it's
sometimes it
worked
takes
for
a
years.
while to get them finished. So we might, even if we gave it full funding this year, there's not a guarantee that this is going to get done this year.
Right, I mean, we will do a phased approach at it, and we will nip a piece off of it, and we will start working on it, and we'll continue to come back to the committee, just like the vaults, we started that last year. We're putting another 500,000 in this year, to continue that program and see where we wind up, whether we actually need the remaining 500,000, or whether that 5 turns into 650, or whether it's less than the 500,000. So it actually gives us an opportunity to do a little bit of value engineering and sometimes get actually a better number than we actually thought we started with. So that does happen too, but you know, there's always a concern that it's going to go up.
Fair. Can we go over the city vehicles that we're talking about?
Let's see here. I'll make this bigger.
So these are the ones that we can fund with that 500 some odd.
For that 5 million, well, it's
So
about 5.7 or so. You'd probably be down to the end of this list, cutting off somewhere around there.
Right, start at the top of the list, and Chris is here to tell you how this list was comprised. But they keep a fleet database of all the vehicles, the years, the models, and the maintenance done to them. And then they go down through the list and they look at critical needs in each department, particularly operational department like street maintenance for snow plowing and repairs or forestry or whatever you might see on the list here. So Chris, you want to talk just a little bit about how that prioritization happens?
Certainly, the entire list of critical vehicles, you may recall from our original discussion, is $26 million, and that doesn't include fire and police, which are separate. This list then is the most critical of that critical list. And what we do is to go through and talk to the other commissioners. I do. Occasionally directors will participate in the discussion, and those all happened 3-4 months ago. And then you saw some of the results of the submissions to this committee from those various departments about what they thought was important. And all those vehicles are important. That whole 26 million is, and the next 30 million of needed is important as well. It's just a question of what we can keep running from one year to another. So we either have to replace it, or we have to try to keep it running, or we surplus it and it's not available for services. So when I put this final list together from all those inputs and from the maintenance managers that are doing the day-to-day repairs on them, what I'm looking for here is to try to touch the most critical items of each one of the departments that's having trouble meeting their operational needs because of vehicles. And so you'll see that, like, they might need 9 refuse trucks, but there's only 4 on here. So 5 of them will have to live another year, you know, for us to try to keep those repaired with the funds we have in our budget. Circuit Attorney's Office really needs 4 vehicles, but there's 2 on here. And so we'll try to keep 2 of the others working clean. And it's that way all the way down. And so the things that are on the bubble here are the 10-year-old short aerial trucks that traffic uses to do signal maintenance and to change street light bulbs. There's 9 of those trucks. At this funding level, they would get 2 of those replaced. So probably they'll end up losing 4 or 5 of those before we have a chance to fund them again next year. Mostly because these things are difficult to keep running, and the diesel engines that are in them are already up close to 300,000 miles, and they idle twice as much as they drive because they're idling in order to operate the bucket. That's what they primarily do. So if you look at anything that's on this list, and you have any questions, I can tell you why it is they need it. And it's everything on the list. I gave you a $10 million list here of the 26, but everything's essential. The problem is you don't have enough money to buy everything. So it's just a question of how much you feel like you can commit to it. And we'll draw the line on the list any place where that is. If you have any specific concerns about something, I'd be happy to address it.
Sure, Paul, can you scroll down so I can see all of the ones that are? So is that highlighted one, the end, or?
Yeah, I don't know what that highlight, yeah, because
Stops
we've
at
got,
5.9.
yeah, we're about at 5.8
Number
or 5.6.
35 was what the end would have been in the original proposal
We're at 34
before
now, between
the
34.
latest cut. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah, this page won't get funded at all.
got it.
Let me ask you, Chris, and I always ask this every time, and for new members of the committee, typically this is also, we practice a 1-for-1. So we don't expand the fleet. What we're doing is replacing an old vehicle with a new vehicle. And that's correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's always 1-for-1 replacement on it. Sometimes departments will come up with something new where they're going to replace 2 or 3 vehicles with one, but we never increase the size of the fleet unless they get written approval from the Director of Operations, from Nancy, and we always advise whether or not we think it's necessary or not based on the vehicles they currently have. So occasionally a new department is created and, new office was created, and so there's 2 or 3 vehicles added, but that's pretty unusual. All of these are all 1-for-1 replacements.
Okay, Christina, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, the only one, obviously it would make sense to try and fund more of the vehicles needed to achieve some of the other goals that we have here, like the signal timing. The one that I don't understand, and I'm hopeful you can explain, is like the circuit attorney's office. Like why do they need vehicles? What do they use them for?
The circuit attorney's office, just like city counselor does, is they have investigators. I think there's 7 investigators, 1 head of investigation, and then the circuit attorney themselves has a vehicle. So in the past, up until about 10, 12 years ago, the state used to provide funding for the circuit attorney's office vehicles. And then the funding from the state went down, and so they were buying used highway patrol vehicles. But the highway patrol, just like our own police department, has started using their vehicles until they basically are rusting in two. And so the used vehicles are not available anymore. So we've been buying the smaller vehicles for their investigators. The other people that ride in these vehicles with the investigators are witnesses, families that are, whole families that are going to court cases. And so they provide them transportation to and from the court when necessary with the investigator that's on that. So you could think of these vehicles, other than the actual elected officials, as being like additional detective vehicles, is basically what they are.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And so if, yeah, because I was just imagining like them using their own vehicles. If they're ferrying families and other cases that they're working, that makes a little more sense to have a department-owned vehicle. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can see from the list, some of these are getting pretty expensive, like those sweepers, $385,000 a hit each time. So yeah, these aren't inexpensive vehicles.
Can I ask also what the numbers on the side mean? Does that mean how long due, overdue? Is that years? Or how
That's
many?
the number of years.
num-
Yeah. If the life cycle is in that first column of numbers, that's what we expect to get out of the vehicle. But you can see that those are all pretty long periods. Then the due overdue, if it's a negative number, it means it's that many years over the expected life cycle already. Now, granted, some of these vehicles are in reserve status right now. They're not frontline vehicles that are used every single day, but they're reserves and they're probably used 3 or 4 times a week. And so what will happen is when we replace these older reserve vehicles, then they will become the frontline vehicles, and those frontline vehicles that are 10 or 12 years old will become the backups. And so we have to have enough backups in each category to basically replace one for one anything that is being repaired. So in our 4 garages, all those bays represent a vehicle that is assigned to a department for work purposes that they can't use it for work that day. And it's even worse when it's a major repair like an engine or drivetrain, other drivetrain component replacement, transmission, and body damage, crashes sometimes takes 2 to 3 weeks to get those repaired. So the minus numbers show you how much more they are over the, so 2007 should have been replaced in 12 years. It's already 6 years overdue.
Nancy, I see your hands raised.
Chris, we've been looking at also one of the mandates is to try and find some more electrical vehicles. Are there vehicles in this grouping that are actually being looked at for being electrical vehicles? Or are they all gas and diesel?
The only one that might be electric on this one, which is in the study that we did 3 years ago, is the van for the comptroller's office. And we don't know for sure that that's possible or not. But when it comes time to replace it, the 1-ton Ford van is available. We've already got 5 of them in the fleet. And so if it meets the operational requirements of the department, based on how many miles a day it drives and where it's available to recharge and doesn't have a complete shift where it's not being used, which I think that one is the case, then we could replace that with an electric vehicle. Most of these things, though, are too big that there are no electric vehicles that are available for them. So pickup trucks, 1-ton vans, small SUVs, those are the things so far that we've been able to replace. And there are several of those going in with, there were several bought with ARPA already, and there are several that went in with funds last year. So we are gradually increasing that, which is why the small piece for recharging stations infrastructure is there, so we can continue to make progress on that. So anytime anything's available here that will meet the operational requirements and is available in electric, then we make it electric instead, provided that it can be done so within the policy of being equivalent to a gasoline vehicle within 5% of the cost for the life cycle basis of it. And they do save maintenance and they save fuel cost, electricity costs less than gasoline or diesel. So there is some payback on some vehicles, but there are not any mid-size or big ones yet so far.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on vehicles? Okay, let's see. Let's go. I did also circulate to the group a new ward exhibit, which illustrates like some unappropriated balances that were in the funds. So you should have all received that. It was about $590,000. It's been allocated. That'll be a different amount per ward. I got these from the comptroller's office, and so those would be added to the ward exhibit. let's see. Okay. What else do we have? Let's see. Going back here. Any other questions about any of the other changes? All right. Well, what I've got is, let me see if I can pull this one up. I've got what the exhibits will look like, incorporating all that list of changes. In the capital budget, you've got the citywide exhibit, which includes both the regular half cent as well as these additional funds, as you can see here, and then all the other exhibits which we circulated at the last meeting. Primarily, it's the parks taxes and the half cent sales taxes, and combined that totals the 81 million in our capital budget. So that's what we have before us. And obviously, looking ahead, what we do here is the capital committee, we make a recommendation, and this gets submitted to the board of ENA. ENA makes their recommendation, and obviously, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Schweitzer, both being on the budget committee, you get another crack at this when it gets down to the board. So, but in order to get this process going, we need to have a recommendation to get this from the committee and submit it to as part of the budget going forward. So, unless anyone has any questions or follow-ups, hearing none, could entertain a motion, if you could, to submit this as the approval of the capital committee to submit this as the recommended budget for the FY25 budget that will be reviewed going forward.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor? Let me see. Should I take a roll, or are we good? All in favor? Let's say Nancy,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Ann, Alderwoman
Aye.
Schweitzer. Sorry,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Let me see, who am I leaving out?
Noel.
Noel,
Aye.
Nodrick,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye as well. Okay, thank you. Like I said, this is again part of the budget process. This capital budget will be incorporated into the overall budget, which becomes part of Board Bill 1, and it will be submitted to the Board of ENA. And then once ENA has its hearings and recommendations, it will be the part of the entire budget package, which goes to the full Board of Aldermen starting on May 1st. So you'll have another crack at this, and you can go over any questions that you'd like to go over at that time. Is there anything else for the common good here that we need to discuss? Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for all this work. This is an incredible amount of work to parse through. So thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome, and we're only just beginning, so we'll be seeing you on the back end of this. All right, well, thank you all. That's all I had. So have a good rest of the day.